Between the hills, the stars, the sky, the river so clear, river so clear.
As we deepen into our service, let us set the tone for this service with a reading entitled The Longing for Something More by Reverend Gretchen Haley. Every little thing that breaks your heart is welcome here. We'll make space for it, give it its due time and praise for the wanting it represents, the longing for something more, some healing hope that remains not yet. We promise no magic, no making it all better, but offer only this circle of trust, this human community that remembers, though imperfectly, that sings and prays, though sometimes awkwardly. This gathering that loves, though not yet enough. We're still practicing, after all, still learning, still in need of help and partners, still becoming able to receive all this beauty, all these gifts we each bring. Come, let's worship together. We join Unitarian Universalists all over the world in lighting our chalice. Would Mary Wilson please come up and light the chalice, which is a symbol of the spark of life in each of us. If you are on Zoom and have your chalice with you, I invite you to turn on your video and while we light them, we are in good company. Our chalice lighting words this morning are entitled, We Light This Flame as an Act of Faith, from Reverend Scott Taylor. We gather again with joy and gratitude, but also with pieces and parts that are worn out and worn down, wanting, once again, trust, to believe that hope is not as fragile as it sometimes seems, that division is not as deep as it sometimes appears. And so we light this flame as an act of faith, a reminder, a redeclaration, a rekindling of the trust that darkness can't ever shut out the light, that kindness is more powerful than we know, that humility and accountability allow us to change, that together we can most certainly bend the arc of this miraculous universe towards beauty, towards justice, toward love. Our program this morning is Who We Are, the Missouri Valley Coalition for Homeless People. And I'm very pleased to introduce to you this morning Michelle Erickson, who is the executive director of the Abused Adult Resource Center, and she's been there since 2005. She has also been involved with the Missouri Valley Coalition of Homeless People since then as well. She's currently serving on the board of that organization and also serves on the boards of the North Dakota Association of Nonprofits and the North Dakota Domestic and Sexual Violence Coalition. In her free time, Michelle enjoys volunteering, kayaking, traveling, cooking, and reading, and spending as much time as she can with her 3 grandchildren. So she joins us today to talk about the Missouri Valley Coalition of Homeless People, what they do, and how the community can get involved in helping those that are unhoused or at risk of being unhoused. Michelle, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invite. And like Don said, I am with the Abused Adult Resource Center. I can't believe I've been there 20 years because I started when I was 10. So weird. But yeah, things have changed over 20 years for sure. And when I first started with the Abused Adult Resource Center, I started as the transitional housing advocate. And so housing has always been a passion of mine, along with working with domestic violence and sexual assault and human trafficking victims. So it's a good mesh because those are 2 things that go hand in hand a lot of the time. But as we know in our community, there are a lot of people unhoused or at risk of being unhoused. And so the Missouri Valley Coalition is made up of about 40 community agencies and people in the community that are just interested in that field of work. And what we try to do for the most part is bring awareness to the situations and then just connect people with the resources they need. We don't necessarily do direct service. We have in the past, but we're now more of kind of trying to close some of the gaps in services that we don't have in our community. A couple of the events that we do throughout the year is we have Project Service Connect, and it is once a year. It's kind of a one-stop shop for people in our community to get some resources, free haircuts, vaccinations, assistance with filling out applications for housing or SNAP benefits or any of those things. The last few years we've been doing it at the Dream Center, and if anyone isn't familiar with the Dream Center, I absolutely tell you to go there, go for a meal or volunteer. That's where I usually end up volunteering. They are serving over 200 people a night. So I think last year they served almost or just over 1 million meals. So that's pretty telling for our community and one of the bigger needs. We've had about 200 people at Project Service Connect over the last few years, and it's really a day to just have everything in one place. I think we did 60 haircuts last year, and it's really amazing the difference a haircut makes to somebody, to see them come in kind of like beaten down and sad, and then they get this haircut and they're like, I feel like I can take on the world now, and it's just a simple haircut. So it makes us feel good that we can do those things for people at no cost. In the fall, we do Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week. National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week is middle of November. And we do several things that week. We do Freezing for a Reason, which is we stand on the corner of Expressway and South 12th with signs about homeless and things like that. And then we just are collecting donations from the community. People bring us clothing, food. And the last few years, it's been decent enough outside that people have just come over and sort of shopped our donations right there, and with new coats and gloves and boots and things like that. We also do a event for the children in the community. I believe Bismarck Public Schools is close to 400 kids right now this year that are either homeless or looking at being unhoused. And so we do an awareness event for the children or the kids, youth too. We're actually doing a dodgeball tournament this year. So May 1st, if anybody's interested in putting a dodgeball team together, there will be some information going out here soon on the website. And Point in Time is probably the other thing that is our biggest awareness event. We go out twice a year on one night in January and one night in July usually. And we try to seek out those that are unhoused and see if they need services, see if, where they spent the night before, try to get them connected, whatever. We usually find far more in the summer than in the winter, but in the winter, the unhoused are living with other people, couch surfing, sleeping in storage units, wherever they can find a safe place to be. A couple of the bigger resources, I guess, for sheltering in the community is United Way, which probably most of you heard they aren't open during the day right now, just open at night. And then Ministry on the Margins, which has kind of an overnight coffee house. And so people, they don't have beds, but they can curl up on the floor or a chair and sleep, for a few hours or get something hot to drink or snack or whatever. And so I believe she's probably having about 50 to 60 a night. And I think United Way houses overnight probably around the 80 people a night. Usually in our community, there's around, I looked at the 2024 stats from January because we didn't have 2025s yet, but there was 63 unhoused that night and 169 sheltered that night in January of last year. We at the Abused Adult Resource Center have 2 shelters. So we have an emergency shelter and a transitional shelter. So we shelter up to about 60 people a night as well. Of course, they have to meet the definition of either domestic violence, sexual assault, or trafficking. And so there's definitely a need. We have a website, MVCHP.com. And on there, we have this Where to Go for Help brochure. And so the way that we do things in our state as far as getting people connected is we have access points. And so the highlighted ones on here, which are AARC, Community Action, Ministry on the Margins, Native Inc., United Way Shelter, and YouthWorks are kind of a point for people to start at. And then they get a kind of an not an evaluation, like an intake sort of, and then we start connecting them to whatever services they need. And that sort of eliminates people from going to this place for this place for the same thing, this place for the same thing. We just try to manage where people are going and get them the right help. So there's numbers for all the food pantries, the shelters, the free meals, all of the things that people can get and find for resources in the community. I have a stack of these I'll leave back there. Feel free to make copies or print it off the website. I carry them in my car because in case I run into somebody and they're like, where do I go? I'm like, here, there's all these resources. So there is definitely a lot of resources in the community. You can eat free every day in this community if you need to or want to. There's clothing, free clothing. We operate Seeds of Hope as well. So we, if somebody loses their house in a fire, we've had people call us and just say, can you help them out? And we usually will give something to them. Or our clients that come in with nothing, we make sure they get clothing from there. When they move out of our shelter into their own apartments, we help furnish their apartments. So we are also giving back to the community, even with all the donations that we get. It's just been like a blessing to be able to have those kind of resources that we can help other people with. And with Seeds of Hope, we do an education program. So people can get work experience if they want from working there and have something to put on their resumes and go out and get jobs. Yeah, as far as the Homeless Coalition goes, anybody's welcome to join. We meet the fourth Monday of every month at 10 a.m. at the Dream Center. Pat Conrad, I don't know where she went, but she's been involved for a really long time. With the Homeless Coalition as well, and a big part of our public awareness committee. So thank you, Pat, for all your time doing that. And if you ever want to just check out a meeting and hear, it's very good for us, the rest of us, to network. Somebody might have a client that they don't know what to do next, and we sort of work it out together as a group and, try to get people in safe places. That's really what it comes down to. So
it's what are some of the key factors where people end up unhoused or at risk of not being housed, and how have you seen those change over your 20 years in the field that you are? And then if there's things you're like, if we just did this one thing, I'm curious about what your take is on what you see in the world that could be different and what gets people where they are.
Sure. I kind of go back and forth because I've been both with the Abused Adult Resource Center and the Homeless Coalition for 20 years, so they kind of mesh a lot. But we've really built up our housing programs because we can't rely on the community for all of those. So not only do we have shelters, we have a 7-unit apartment building, and then we also have several housing programs that we can help pay a deposit and then pay part of rent for a little bit until they can start affording it on their own. And so at any given time, we probably have 60 people in housing every night. Some of the underlying issues, I think, are obviously mental health and substance use, and a lot of those go hand in hand with violence as well. And so the barriers that a lot of our clients face, and then a lot of the people in the community, are bad credit or no credit, past evictions, not having the finances. Affordable and available housing is not great here. When I first started, it was a lot easier. I don't know if anybody knew Wayne Wilson. We kind of thought he was a little bit of a slumlord, but we could get people into his apartments and he would take payments and things like that. People don't do that anymore. When the oil boom hit, we really lost a lot of that opportunity for people to find housing because rent went up. We weren't necessarily part of the oil country, but we were getting everybody that was leaving oil country. And so we were trying to find people apartments that used to be $500 or $600, and now they're $1,000. So money is definitely one of them. And then if people aren't connected to a case manager or a recovery coach or somebody like that, it's going to be a lot harder for them to stay in housing because they're going to have different traumas, different crises come up, and then not have that support to work through that. So at our apartment building, we have 4 of those apartments are supported by a Burleigh County housing voucher. So it's based on income, and then they pay a portion, 30% of their income. 3 of them are flat $600 because we had people that could afford $600, but not $1,000. And so it's just an efficiency apartment, but it's a good little place if you're just getting on your feet again or starting out, and they have a case manager. And so I think it's support and money are probably two of the biggest, and then just making sure people are connected to resources.
I got involved with the Homeless Coalition when I retired, and I was looking around for something to do. I had a degree in social work and had no understanding. I worked in child support enforcement, but I had no understanding of the breadth of the homelessness issue here in town. And through my involvement with the Homeless Coalition, I wound up on the board of directors of AID Incorporated over in Mandan. AID is a very small agency, gets federal grants, and where are they now? They're probably all drying up. AID has a little thrift shop and makes money that way. They do regular fundraising. And what I like about AID and the involvement of AID in the Homeless Coalition is that the coalition helps. I mean, a lot of the staff in these agencies are young people just coming out of school and starting to get their first job. This is a wonderful way for them to understand how their agency fits into the whole network of services available in the community, and helps agencies understand what their own driveway or alleyway or whatever you call it is, so that they do what they say they're going to do, what their mission is, and don't try to do everything for everybody, because you can't do it that way. I know from AID's perspective, we have a woman who helps connect, a woman on staff who helps connect folks who come in for help with the help they need. And then she does a little write-up that we as the board look at every month or every board meeting. And so many of the people, because AID works with the working poor, those who have enough, have the ability to help themselves and are trying to help themselves. AID is never going to end homelessness. We're too small, we can't do it. But we can try to prevent homelessness. 90% of the little vignettes that we read at board meetings, it starts with a medical issue. The waitress breaks her wrist. She can't carry big trays to serve customers, and she has to take a couple of weeks off from work. Well, she doesn't have a lot of savings, so the question is, do you pay the rent or do you pay the utility bill? And so maybe when we talk, when our staff person works with that client, what's the best thing to keep you from becoming homeless? And it may be one past due utility bill and this month's utility bill. Sometimes very simple things can prevent the homelessness, but it takes the skill of somebody who has worked in this field for a while to be able to suss out those kind of issues and figure out what's the best way to help.
I think if we can be more preventative in the community instead of reactive, that's going to make a huge difference. And, you'll hear people talk about the Band-Aid approach, you just give them some money and then they're going to be asking again. And that's not necessarily true. Like, people that are unhoused, people that are looking at being unhoused, people that are victims of crimes, they're survivors. They will know how to figure it out, but they just need our help to get there. And I think that's what I hate when people say, it's just a handout, not a hand up. And it's like, everything is helpful, and food pantries. Well, they got food there and they got food there. Who cares? It's food. Let's just make sure people in our community are fed and safe and warm in the winter and those kind of things. So anything you can do to be preventative instead of reactive is much better for the community. Coalition does not have a location. We don't have an office or anything. We meet at the Dream Center. We work on a very small budget. It's under $50,000 right now a year, which helps us pay for the consensus council that does a lot of our organizing, because everybody that's involved with it is either working full time with their other jobs or, community members that volunteer a lot or whatever. So we have no paid staff. It's all volunteers, and we just do the best we can, closing the gaps that we can. And we all are very connected. So if I have somebody that comes to me and is like, I can't pay my utility bill, and we maybe don't have that kind of grant funding, we will refer them to AID, or we have a cultural request. And so then we try to seek out Global Neighbors or Native Inc. and try to do a warm handoff so that they get given to this other agency to find what they need. So it's just working together and collaborating on things. Section 8 housing. So most of it is Burleigh County housing around here. Burleigh County housing, Morton County housing. are the ones that usually are doing Section 8 vouchers, and there's only so much money. So once those are used up, what we do and what the continuum of care, which is the state sort of organization that handles those kind of housing things, is we do an assessment with somebody to see what their level of unhoused is. I know this sounds kind of weird, but things like mental health, substance use, how long have you been homeless? Are you chronically homeless? All of those things. And then they go on a wait list. So then if Burleigh County has an open voucher, or Edwinton, which is run by Burleigh County, which is an apartment building that's for disability, dual diagnosis. So they have to have like a substance issue and a mental health issue, or any of the other housing programs in the state. Then we have this system that they can go in and pull somebody off of the waiting list that's next and call them and offer them, like, do you still want housing? Come and do this meeting, blah, blah, blah. So we try to address it as the need and the higher needs first, and try to get people housed. And then, we work through as the openings come up. So is there a shortage of Section 8 housing? Probably. We could always use more. But there are many different housing programs in the community.
Well, a number of years ago, when our winters were a little colder, our church actually housed a homeless person. We didn't find out till spring that somebody was living in our little garden shed out back most of the winter. After the snow melted, there was a sleeping bag and food wrappers and everything back there that just floored me. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Someone would be so destitute, that's all they could live.
Mm-hmm.
Never found out who that was, just that one winter, but
it's tough. Like, I know we had a client at one time that used to charge his phone in the ditch at Basin Electric because he found a pole that he could plug his phone into. And if you don't have an ID or a cell phone in this community, it's almost impossible to get things done. And so, like, we'll help anybody that comes into our agency for help. If they need an ID, we will pay the $8 to get them an ID. And there's a lot of those things that aren't covered by grants necessarily. Who knows what's going to happen here with federal grants, but grants are pretty specific about what you can help with. And so if people have unrestricted money, that's great, because then you can do IDs or backpacks if they need to get on a bus and go somewhere, or a suitcase, or those little things that people don't think about and that we maybe take for granted. People in the community need those. So people will call us and ask what we need, and we'll say things like towels or can openers. If you go to a food pantry and get a bunch of canned food and you don't own a can opener, it's not going to help you. But nobody really thinks about that. So just think about the things in your life that you wouldn't know how to deal with if you didn't have, and that's what everybody needs. So okay, I'm just going to say it. The city needs to pitch in more. I'm just going to say it. Fargo, they get, I think, $500,000 from their city every year towards homelessness. And we get $5,000, and it goes towards the Homeless Coalition, and we use it for transportation. So we do bus tickets, and the agencies can request bus tickets from the project goes through Bismarck Transit, so they can request them through there. It's a community problem, right? And these nonprofits are all dealing with hoping they get a grant or trying to do a fundraiser so they get some money. But the city really, I think, needs to step up a little bit more. I was in Michigan a few months ago for a conference, and they have these bathrooms that are around the city, and they're free, and you go in and you do your business, and then you leave. And people are worried about, well, is it going to be gross? Are they going to be dirty? But it's timed, so they can only be in there for so long, and then they'll have to get out, and then they can't go back in again. So it's another thing that could be helpful for our community, especially in the winter when where COVID, people didn't have anywhere to go to the bathroom, they didn't have anywhere to shower. It was awful. And I think it was a real learning curve for us too. Like, where are we going to put people that are unhoused that are deathly ill right now? And luckily, I think it was the Department of Health and Human Services stepped up, and then we were putting people in hotels for a little while that were unhoused, so they'd had a safe place to stay and get better. And we had a mom right away that was pregnant. She was the first one that had a baby during COVID here, and baby tested positive, and she was negative, and they wouldn't let her take her baby home. And she had to leave her baby in care of the hospital for 2 weeks before, and they made her walk. She had to walk. Nobody would give her a ride because COVID, and we were all scared. I get that. We didn't know what was going on, but it was definitely a learning curve to what are we going to do with people when they don't have anywhere to go and there's this pandemic happening, you know?
I remember it might have been 6, 7, 8 years ago, state funding was dramatically reduced. And now we are in a time when a lot of cuts are maybe coming and are already coming for programs that help people. And so if you want to say anything more about how that could be remedied, but I also want to, you've said some really good things about how much is being provided and things are there. If you could say some, where is like the motivation for helping that is still strong in our community, and where is that coming from? I mean, where's some of the people who are really involved and committed to working and helping?
The motivation, honestly, is just people that care. And when I even hire people, I don't necessarily look at what their education is or you know what their experience is. It's like, do you want to help people? Like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, do you actually want to help people and accept people for who they are? Like, it could be everybody is a paycheck or two away from being unhoused or struggling, you know? And I think a medical issue, like Pat said, a lot of them are medical issues. You end up in the hospital, you lose your job, then you get out and you can't pay your rent. And, you know, it's just like a boom, boom, boom. And I think if you can just I have learned more from just talking to people that are struggling. When I volunteer at the Dream Center, I help serve the meal, and then I go out and I just walk around and talk to people like, how are you doing today? What's going on? You know? And that's all they want. They want somebody to listen to them, and not necessarily, they're not all out there to use the system or, you know, take advantage of everybody. It's just helping. Like, I don't know, it seems so simple to me, but I know a lot of people don't understand that. And I think it's just a matter of finding what your heart wants to do, whether it's kids or get involved. I love ministry. Youth Works is another big one that does a lot. AID, AARC, Welcome House, shelters families. You know, there's just Dream Centers, Adopt a Block Food, and their target population is more at risk of being unhoused and elderly. So we all try to do our own populations, but work together to get people what they need.
We extinguish the chalice with these closing words by Chad Snyder. It's entitled Wild Waters. These waters, they never stay calm, not for long, because they are teeming with the stuff of life. The energy of our being washes over and around us. Let us brace each other when we need to stand against those currents. Let us hold hands when what we need is to relax in the waves, riding them together.
Put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your heart. You want the world to know. You won't let hatred grow. Put a little love in your heart. I hope when you decide this will be your guide. Put a little love in your heart. And the world will be a better place. And the world will be a better place for you and me. Just wait.